Jackson had never thought his life would end like this. As he floated in the dark metal cage of an alien warship, he wondered if he'd ever see Earth again. His eyes blinked against the cold, harsh lights. The Orgon had taken him and thousands of others, treating them like cattle, holding them in this monstrous ship. Jackson wasn't a soldier. He was a scientist, an ordinary person trying to make a life in one of the far-flung human colonies. But now none of that mattered. The aliens had come, overwhelming his colony in a matter of hours. Their ships, sleek and silent, landed as if they had always been there, ready to strike. Their technology was advanced, beyond human understanding. The Orgon believed in power, complete control. And Jackson, caught in their grasp, was nothing more than a prisoner. The Orgon had their way with most of the captives. They would scan minds, extract secrets, and break wills. But for Jackson, something strange happened. As they probed his mind with their machines, Jackson felt a strange resistance. It wasn't physical. It wasn't even something he could explain. But his thoughts, his memories, his most private fears were safe. His mind wasn't giving in to their control. At first, Jackson thought it was a mistake. Maybe it was luck. But as days passed, he realized it was something more. His body felt different, like something inside him was working against the invasion. There was one small thing, something he hadn't thought about in years. A tattoo, a symbol on his back. It was an ancient mark, placed there when he was just a child. The tattoo had been given to him by an old Apache woman, his grandmother to be exact. She had always spoken of the power in the old ways, the forgotten knowledge that the modern world had left behind. Jackson had never paid much attention to her stories, seeing them as fairy tales or old traditions that had no place in the future. But now, as the Orgon tortured his mind, that tattoo began to glow faintly. A sense of warmth spread through his chest, and for the first time since his capture, Jackson felt something stir inside him, a quiet strength. He had thought it was nothing more than ink on skin. But now he realized it was a key, a secret weapon. The tattoo, something from Earth's deep past, had saved him. The Orgon's interrogation room was cold and sterile. The walls were made of smooth black material that shimmered in the dim light. They had strapped him to a chair with thin silver restraints, leaving him vulnerable. But Jackson's mind was strong. He wasn't sure how or why, but he was resisting. The Orgon scientists, tall and thin with long, emotionless faces, were not used to their prey fighting back. "You will cooperate, human," one of them said, its voice smooth and alien. "Your memories are being downloaded now." Resistance is futile, but Jackson wasn't giving up. As they connected their machines to his head, he focused on the tattoo on his back. It wasn't just a mark anymore, it was a symbol of survival, of hope. It was as if the tattoo was more than a design. It was a defensive code, a link between the ancient wisdom of Earth and the technology of the future. The Orgon didn't understand. They kept pressing, their machines clicking and buzzing, but the more they tried to invade his mind, the more they were blocked. It was as if the tattoo was filtering their probes, sending their efforts into chaos. Jackson's heart raced as he focused on the tattoo. His mind was clearer now than it had been since his capture. He could almost feel the wisdom of his ancestors in his bones guiding him. He wasn't just a prisoner. He had something the Orgon didn't. The strength of generations of humans who had survived the worst the world, and the universe, could throw at them. The Orgon scientists exchanged frustrated glances, their calm expressions cracking for the first time. This shouldn't be possible," one of them spoke, his voice shaky for the first time. Jackson didn't understand what was happening, but he knew one thing. The Orgon couldn't control him. They had underestimated him. With a sharp jerk of his wrist, he broke the weak restraint holding him in place. The Orgon scientists shrieked in alarm, but Jackson was already moving. He ducked under the hovering machines and dashed toward the door. His legs were weak from the hours of captivity, but the power in his tattoo seemed to push him forward. Each step felt like it was driven by something much stronger than just his body. He grabbed the door's control panel and slammed his fist into it. It sparked and cracked open. He burst into the hall, blinking against the harsh lighting. He had no plan, no idea where to go, but he knew he couldn't stay there. Jackson moved quickly, slipping through the corridors of the massive ship. He didn't know what the Orgon were doing with the other captives, but he had to find them. There had to be others who were still alive. He couldn't be the only one left. After what felt like hours of running, he found a small holding area. And then he saw them. 3 girls hanging upside down from chains, their bodies still and limp. Their faces were hidden in the shadows, but Jackson could see the faint outlines of tattoos on their skin. His heart stopped. The tattoos weren't just marks. They were the same as his own. The same ancient symbols. These girls were connected to him in a way he couldn't understand. They were not ordinary captives. They had been marked with the same symbol that had saved him, and now he realized they were just as important as he was. Jackson rushed to them, his heart pounding. The girls were breathing, but weak. He couldn't just leave them here. His mind raced, there was no time. The Orgon were searching for him. They wouldn't stop until they had him back. As he worked to release the girls, he heard a voice, a low, soft whisper from one of them. It was faint, but Jackson heard it clearly. "Stop, I'll buy them." The words echoed in his mind. It was as if they had been waiting for him, as if they knew this moment would come. He wasn't just rescuing them, they were rescuing him too. Jackson didn't know how, but he could feel it now. The connection between them, the power of the tattoo, of the mark. It was more than just survival. It was a way forward, a link to something ancient and powerful. Together they could fight back. But for now, they had to escape. As the Orgon's footsteps drew nearer, Jackson quickly unlatched the chains holding the girls. He couldn't explain it, but he knew they were special, chosen in a way he couldn't understand. Their tattoos were more than just art. They were keys, like his own, to unlocking something much greater than themselves. As the trio slipped into the shadows, Jackson realized something even more important than their survival. They weren't alone anymore. And the Orgon had no idea what they were up against. The war had just begun, and humanity had something the aliens could never comprehend. The tattoos were just the beginning. Jackson crouched low, his heart thudding in his chest. The soft clinking of the Orgon soldiers' boots echoed down the hall. His breath was shallow, and every instinct screamed for him to run. But the 3 girls who had been hanging in chains just moments ago were now standing beside him, their eyes full of fear, but also something more. Hope. The Orgon didn't understand what was happening. They never expected a prisoner like Jackson to escape, let alone find others. 3 young girls marked with the same strange tattoos that had saved him. Now, with the tattoos glowing faintly under the dim lights of the ship's corridors, Jackson could feel a new sense of purpose rising in him. The tattoo was no longer just an ancient design. It was a signal, a beacon. Somehow, the markings had linked the girls together, like pieces of a puzzle he hadn't yet figured out. The power it held was ancient and deep, something the Orgon's advanced technology couldn't touch. They thought they controlled the galaxy, but they hadn't encountered this side of humanity, the side that refused to be beaten. "Come on," Jackson whispered, urging the girls forward. They moved swiftly, their feet light on the metal floor, their bodies seemingly guided by the same mysterious force that had given Jackson his freedom. The ship, vast and intimidating, seemed endless, but Jackson had no time to waste. He had to get them to the control room, the heart of the Orgon vessel. There, they would find a way to stop the ship's systems, maybe even destroy it from the inside out. It was their only chance. The girls, Naya, Talia, and Mira, moved silently, their expressions determined. Jackson felt a deep sense of connection with them. He didn't know why, but it was as if their survival was tied to his own. The more they moved, the stronger the energy from the tattoos seemed to grow, swirling in the air around them like a shield. "I don't know what these tattoos mean," Jackson said, glancing over his shoulder at the girls, "but I think they're the key to stopping the Orgon. We can't just run. We have to fight back." Naya, the oldest of the 3, nodded solemnly. Her voice was quiet but filled with certainty. "We were chosen for this. We've known since the day the tattoos were given to us." Talia, the youngest, looked up at Jackson. "But why us? Why now?" Jackson stopped for a moment, unsure of the answer. "I don't know. But I think these tattoos, our tattoos, are part of something much bigger than any of us. I think they're a reminder, a message, that we're stronger than we know." The girls seemed to accept his words without question. They had lived their lives knowing that the world was changing, knowing there were forces beyond their control. The tattoos, their connection to the ancient ways of Earth, had always been a mystery. But now it was clear. Those old ways were alive, and they were ready to fight. They came to a junction in the hall, a massive doorway ahead of them. Through the thick glass, Jackson could see the control room, a large chamber with consoles and screens flashing with alien data. This was the heart of the Organ ship, where all of their systems were controlled, and it was guarded. Jackson pressed himself against the wall, listening. The sound of voices came from the other side. The Organ were preparing to launch another attack, this time on the humans' homeworld. "We need to get in there," Jackson said. "I'm not sure how, but we'll figure it out." Mira, the quietest of the three girls, stepped forward. Her hand rested lightly on the door control. Without a word, she pressed a series of buttons. To Jackson's surprise, the door slid open with a soft hiss. "Wait, how did you—" Jackson started. Mira smiled. "I've seen it before. In my dreams. The tattoos. They're not just for defense. They're keys." The room beyond was bright with flickering lights and digital screens that hummed with life. Jackson and the girls stepped into the center of the control room. At first, everything seemed to be working as normal, but then the air seemed to vibrate with energy. The tattoos on their skin began to glow brighter. Jackson felt the pull, the connection between them all. The Organ had been wrong. They had thought the tattoos were just meaningless markings. But they were powerful, and now they were activating, syncing with the ship's systems. A sudden voice interrupted the silence. It was calm and cold. "Intruders detected." The voice came from a towering figure, an Organ commander standing at the far end of the room. His skin shimmered with metallic hues and his eyes glowed with an unnatural light. The alien's presence was commanding. He had seen them before, the human prisoners, but he had never imagined they would have this kind of power. "You will be captured," the commander said, his voice harsh and metallic. "The Organ are unstoppable." Jackson stepped forward, his mind clear, focused. "You don't understand. You never did. We're not just human. We're the last of something greater." Naya stepped forward, the tattoo on her arm glowing bright. "And we're not alone." Suddenly, the room's lights flickered and hummed. The Organ commander's eyes widened in realization. The tattoos, no, these humans were different. The power inside them was unlike anything the Organ had ever encountered. In a desperate attempt to regain control, the commander raised his hand, signaling the ship's security systems to activate. But before he could react, the tattoos on Jackson and the girls began to pulse with energy, sending a shockwave through the ship's systems. Jackson felt the connection grow even stronger, as if the tattoos were tapping into something deep within him, something ancient. The ship's walls began to shake. The screens flickered, and for a moment everything seemed to freeze. "We have to act quickly," Jackson said. "If we don't, the ship will lock us in forever." Mira stepped forward, her eyes closed in concentration. With a deep breath, she pressed her hand against one of the consoles. The air around her seemed to hum with power as the tattoo on her wrist glowed fiercely. The entire control room shuddered. The Organ commander's face twisted with frustration as his systems began to fail. It was as if the tattoos had hijacked the ship's core functions. The lights dimmed and the hum of the engine slowed. "No," the commander shouted. "You cannot defeat us." Jackson grinned, his hand on the console. "Not with this ship, you can't." With one final, concentrated effort, the girls and Jackson synchronized their movements. The tattoos on their skin sparked in unison, and the ship began to crumble under the pressure of their energy. The once indestructible Organ technology was now nothing more than a tool for their liberation. The ship lurched, and the commander's voice was drowned out by the rising energy. In one swift movement, the control room was offline, and the ship's power was fading. The Organ were defeated not through brute force, but through a force far older and more powerful, the resilience of the human spirit. Carried through the ages in the tattoos on their skin, the Organ had underestimated humanity's true strength. As the ship's systems began to collapse, Jackson turned to the girls. "We did it. Together we did it, but the journey was far from over. The Organ might have been defeated, but the fight for Earth's survival had just begun."